You ever been in a room where someone walks in and drains the air out of it, without even raising their voice? Where every word they speak feels like a performance, and you're the audience, never the equal, always the pawn. If you've felt that, then you already know what it's like to stand across from a narcissist. But what if I told you? The most powerful way to disarm them isn't yelling back, calling them out, or exposing their lies. No, the most devastating thing you can do is stay deadly calm, and hit them with responses so controlled, so surgical they unravel themselves right in front of you. Because here's the truth: narcissists crave chaos, and they hate silence. They thrive when they trigger you. But when you stay composed, when your tone doesn't waver, when your eyes stay locked with calm authority, they lose control. And when they lose control, they panic. That's your leverage. And it starts with just 7 simple, but devastating responses. Say you're accused of something ridiculous. They're twisting your words, rewriting history, baiting you into a shouting match. Don't argue. Just look them straight in the eye and say, "That's one version of events." That's it. No defense, no elaboration, just that one line. It tells them loud and clear, you're not buying into their fantasy. You don't validate lies. You don't react. You observe. And that rattles them because they can't pull you into their storm if you refuse to step in. Then comes the guilt game, the emotional hooks. After everything I've done for you, sound familiar? This is where you drop your second bomb, calmly. You're entitled to your feelings. You didn't deny anything. You didn't take blame. You acknowledge their emotion without letting it manipulate you. And trust me, nothing frustrates a narcissist more than knowing their guilt trip just hit a brick wall. You have to understand something deep and often overlooked. Narcissists don't win because they're smarter. They win because you react. The moment you raise your voice, the moment your body tenses, your tone shifts, your pulse quickens, they've got you. That's the fuel they run on. That's the chaos they orchestrate. Because when you're emotionally hijacked, you're no longer in control. They are. And that's where the real damage begins. But when you train yourself to respond with calm, I mean deadly calm, you instantly flip the dynamic. They can scream, twist the truth, guilt you, provoke you. But if you don't rise to that bait, you starve the monster. It's psychological warfare, and your best armor is emotional neutrality. They don't know what to do with silence. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't flinch. When your eyes don't dart, when your tone doesn't shift, when your breathing stays steady, it sends one clear, unshakable messaging: you are not in control here. That calm, that stillness, that's what breaks them. Because narcissists want chaos, not control. They want your control. And when you don't give it, when you hold the line with ice in your veins and fire in your spine, they unravel. Not because you attacked, but because you refuse to play the game. And that's the first and most brutal truth: the one who stays calm wins. They'll hit you with it when you least expect it. That sharp turn into guilt, coated with fake sincerity. After everything I've done for you. It's not gratitude. It's a trap. It's a calculated move to get you back in the cage. And most people fall for it. They rush to explain, to justify, to apologize for something they didn't even do. That's exactly what a narcissist wants. They want you to feel small, indebted, like your very existence is a favor they granted. But here's where you turn the table. You don't defend. You don't explain. You meet their performance with the calmest, coldest truth there is. You're entitled to your feelings. That line isn't just a sentence. It's a weapon. It cuts off the manipulation at the root. You acknowledge their emotion without absorbing the blame. You don't argue, you don't bend, and you don't validate the fantasy they're spinning. That response puts the responsibility back where it belongs. On them. And that drives a narcissist insane. Because it tells them you're not here to be emotionally puppeteered. You're not afraid to let them sit in their own discomfort, their own drama. You saw the hook, and you didn't bite. You didn't react. You responded. That's power. That's emotional jujitsu. And when you use it right, they don't even know where to aim next. Because you just pulled the rug out from under their favorite move without ever raising your voice. They love to chip away at you slowly, not with open insults. Those are too obvious. No, a narcissist comes at you sideways. The backhanded compliments, the smirks when you speak, The subtle digs masked as jokes. It's psychological erosion. They want to destabilize you from the inside out. They want you second-guessing your intelligence, your worth, your place in the room. And the moment you snap back, the moment you defend yourself, they win. Because they've pulled you into their game. But the play they never see coming is things. You look them in the eye, completely calm, and say, "Interesting perspective." That line, that's lethal, because it tells them something very dangerous. You heard them. But you're unaffected. You're not denying what they said. You're just not giving it weight. You're not telling them they're wrong. You're showing them they're irrelevant. And that stings more than any insult. It slices right through their need to be feared, to be admired, to be the smartest one in the room. Because when you respond with calm indifference, they're forced to confront the one thing they can't handle. Your unshakable confidence. You didn't try to prove your worth. You didn't beg for respect. You stood still. You stood silent. And you made it clear you don't need their validation to know who you are. That kind of quiet power. That humiliates them more than any loud confrontation ever could. The moment they feel you pulling away, they switch tactics. Suddenly, the same person who undermined you is showering you with praise. The charm flips on like a switch. The fake empathy, the flattery, the warmth. It all comes rushing in, and for a second, it feels real. That's the bait. That's how they reel you back in. Narcissists know how to play the role of the perfect partner, friend, colleague. But it's not love. It's a leash. And if you fall for it, you're right back in their control. This is where you take the power back with one simple line. "I'll have to think about that." Not yes. Not no. You don't owe them immediate access to your time, your decisions, your trust. That one calm sentence creates distance, and narcissists hate distance. Because distance means you're thinking for yourself. You didn't get swept up. You didn't jump back into their web. You paused. You gave yourself space. And in that space you become the authority. That's what makes them squirm. They need urgency, emotion, impulse. But you gave them patience, calculation, self-respect. That kind of restraint doesn't just break the pattern. It breaks them. Because now they're not steering the moment. You are. And when a narcissist no longer drives the narrative, they lose the only power they ever had, the illusion that you needed them. You'll notice it when the room suddenly goes cold. They stop texting. They stop acknowledging you. They pull back. Not because they're done with you, but because they want you to come crawling. That silence isn't an accident, it's a weapon. A calculated move to make you question yourself, to spark your anxiety, to trigger that itch to fix whatever you didn't even break. And most people rush in, explaining, apologizing, trying to restore the peace. But here's what flips the entire scripting: you respond with one word, noted, no emotion, no explanation, no panic, just that one word. It lands harder than any argument ever could. Because it tells them you see what they're doing, and you're not affected by it. You're not asking why. You're not chasing. You're not begging for attention. You're simply acknowledging the game and refusing to play it. That calm, detached response. That's psychological dominance. It's the ultimate insult without ever raising your voice. And for a narcissist, that's unbearable, because it tells them they've lost their grip. They no longer own your energy. You just showed them that their silence has zero power over you. And that's the one thing they can't manipulate. The person who doesn't react. At some point, they'll flip the script. Out of nowhere, they become the victim. Suddenly, you're the aggressor. You're the one who's misunderstood, insensitive, unfair. They twist the narrative so fast it makes your head spin. And if you're not grounded, you'll get pulled into defending yourself, explaining every word, justifying every decision. That's exactly where they want you. On your heels, under pressure, proving your worth to someone who never intended to see it in the first place. But here's where you dismantle the manipulation with complete composure. You look at them, no emotion, no tension, and say, "Let's agree to disagree." That phrase is lethal, not because it's loud, but because it ends the conversation on your terms. You didn't ask for approval. You didn't seek validation. You made it clear you're not debating your reality anymore. And that shakes them, because narcissists live for the argument, not to solve anything, but to exhaust you, confuse you, and ultimately control you. But when you calmly disengage, when you refuse to fight for understanding from someone committed to misunderstanding you, that's power. That's emotional mastery. You didn't lose control. You chose peace. And for a narcissist, peace is terrifying. Because peace means you're no longer hooked. You're free. And nothing humiliates them more than knowing you walked away unbothered. They'll keep pushing because they believe you won't walk away. They believe, deep down, that you need this connection. That no matter how many times they lie, manipulate, twist things, you'll stay. You'll argue. You'll cry. You'll beg. That's the blueprint they've seen over and over again. They count on your emotions betraying you. They count on your need for closure, but what they never expect, what they never see coming, is silence paired with finality. The kind of calm that isn't performance, isn't strategy, it's power. And when you look them dead in the eye and say, "This conversation is over," it doesn't just stop the noise. It ends the entire illusion. See, a narcissist lives off continuation. That's their oxygen. They don't care if it's a fight or a fake reconciliation. As long as you're engaged, they win. Because every minute you spend reacting to them, trying to explain yourself, trying to be seen, trying to get decency from someone who operates without it, that's time you're not spending owning your power. They'll provoke. They'll push. They'll find your emotional pressure points and press on them like a piano key until you break. But when you refuse to go one more round, when you remain still, intentional, and say with complete clarity and zero weakness, "This conversation is over," you become the one who shuts the door, not them. And make no mistake, this doesn't mean they'll stop immediately. If anything, it enrages them. It throws them off. They'll come back harder, more desperate, more dramatic. They'll test your silence, because they've lost something they can't afford to losing your participation. Without your energy, their power shrinks. Their voice echoes back to them with no audience. The control they once had starts to slip like sand through their hands, and they will scramble to get it back. You'll hear the sudden apologies, the confessions masked as empathy, the classic, "I just want to talk." Don't fall for it, because what you're really seeing is a narcissist gasping for air after you pulled the plug on the game. Most people don't realize how dangerous calm detachment is to a narcissist. It's not just resistance, it's exposure. It shows them that their manipulations have an expiration date. And more importantly, it shows you that you've outgrown their entire pattern. When you say, "This conversation is over," you're not walking away because you're weak. You're walking away because you're done explaining basic human decency to someone who isn't interested in it. You're done repeating yourself to someone who isn't listening. You're done proving your worth to someone committed to misunderstanding you. That statement becomes more than a boundary. It becomes a revolution. It's you reclaiming your dignity, and it doesn't mean you'll feel powerful in the moment. Sometimes walking away won't feel like victory. It'll feel like loss, grief, uncertainty. That's normal. Narcissistic abuse doesn't leave obvious bruises. It wounds your identity. So standing up for yourself may feel like rebellion against everything you've been conditioned to tolerate. But let me tell you something. That discomfort you feel after saying, "This conversation is over," that's not weakness. That's healing. That's your nervous system recalibrating. That's your mind realizing you're finally choosing you over chaos. And here's what most people get wrong. They think strength means staying in the fire longer, arguing more, enduring more, being strong enough to take it. No, real strength is knowing when to stop the conversation, when to recognize that your peace is more important than being right, being understood, being loved by someone incapable of giving it. That line, "This conversation is over," it's not cold, it's not cruel, it's the most compassionate thing you can do. For yourself. You have to retrain your mind to believe that silence can be louder than shouting, that a calm exit can be more devastating than 100 explosive confrontations. Because narcissists want you reactive. They want to see you sweat, stumble, lose your voice in trying to convince them you matter. But when you give them nothing, no panic, no tears, no engagement, they are left with themselves. And that silence becomes the mirror they can't shatter. It reflects back every manipulation, every failure to dominate you, and that is what crushes them. Not your rage, your calm. You don't have to slam doors to end a war. Sometimes all it takes is a controlled breath and a single, unwavering sentence. This conversation is over. No explanations. No follow-up texts. No attempts to fix. Just finality. And in that moment, you reclaim something they never wanted you to have. Sovereignty. The power to protect your energy. The authority to walk away not because you couldn't fight, but because you finally realized you didn't have to. And that, right there, is how you humiliate a narcissist. Not with revenge, but with the most devastating response of all, self-respect wrapped in silence. In a world where everyone's talking, posting, reacting, over-explaining, there's one thing that disrupts all of it more than any scream, more than any confrontation. It's silence. But not the kind that comes from fear or confusion. I'm talking about intentional silence. Tactical silence. The kind that rattles the foundation of someone who thrives on your chaos. Narcissists don't know what to do when you don't react. Because their whole game is built on provoking you, drawing you in, getting under your skin. They need you loud. They need you flustered. They need your energy. But the moment you choose silence, not as surrender, but as strategy, you take away their power source. When you say nothing after they try to bait you with another jab, when you don't flinch at their passive, aggressive remark, when you don't rise to their twisted attempt to spark an argument, you're speaking volumes. Because your stillness says, I'm not engaging with dysfunction. And that's the one sentence they can't handle, especially when it's delivered with no sound at all. Silence puts a mirror in front of their behavior. It forces them to sit with their own toxicity without distraction. And that mirror, that's their worst nightmare. Because narcissists don't want truth, they want control. And silence takes that control away. But here's what makes it truly powerful. You're not silent because you're afraid. You're silent because you see through them. You've moved past the need to be heard by someone who isn't capable of listening. You've stopped handing over your emotional energy like it's a gift to someone who's only ever used it as ammunition. And when you master that level of restraint, it's not just impressive. It's terrifying to the person who used to press your buttons and watch you spin. This kind of silence isn't passive. It's active. It's presence. It's power in its rawest form. It's the mental discipline to understand that not every insult requires a rebuttal. Not every lie deserves a correction. Not every manipulator deserves a stage. You save your words for people who respect them. And when you withhold them from someone who's weaponized your voice, that absence becomes a form of strength. It teaches you that not every war needs to be fought in the open. Some of the most brutal battles are won by simply refusing to show up. The next time they expect the old you. The one who defended, pleaded, explained, stay quiet. Let them sit in that vacuum. Let them flounder in the absence of your reaction. Because when you train yourself to be calm, silent, and still, you become something they never prepared for. You become untouchable. And that's when they realize they didn't lose the argument. They lost access to you. And that's a wound they can't ever bandage. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, everything changes. Narcissists rely on your emotional instability to gain the upper hand. That's their entire playbook. Manipulate the environment, trigger a reaction, then use that reaction to make you look like the unstable one. And if you don't understand how this game works, you'll fall into it over and over again. You'll defend yourself, argue, yell, cry, and in doing so, you hand them the script. They get to play the calm, rational one while you unravel in real time. But when you regulate yourself, when you stay centered and unshaken, you rewrite the script entirely. Self-regulation is not about being cold or robotic. It's about ownership. Ownership over your thoughts. Ownership over your breath. Ownership over your response. It's the ability to stand in front of someone who is trying to provoke the worst in you, and instead, show them the best of your control. That is psychological dominance. That is power, not because you're louder, but because you're unshakable. They can throw accusations, they can gaslight, they can play victim, and none of it sticks. Why? Because you didn't absorb it. You didn't take the bait, you saw it for what it was, a distraction. And here's what they never expect: that moment when you pause, look them dead in the eye, and choose not to engage. That pause is everything. It's where your strength lives. It's where your identity sharpens. Because in that split second, You tell them, I'm not going to let you hijack my emotions. I'm not going to abandon myself for your chaos. That pause becomes your armor. It separates who you are from who they want you to become. Most people think the loudest voice in the room wins. But the truth is, it's the calmest presence. That's the one people remember. That's the one that changes dynamics. Narcissists may dominate the conversation, but they don't dominate the energy if you don't let them. And when you train yourself to respond with intention rather than impulse, you stop reacting to them and start responding for you. That's when everything flips. That's when their control evaporates. Because let me tell you, there is nothing more threatening to a narcissist than a person who doesn't flinch. When your nervous system isn't available to be hijacked, you become untouchable. You become the one who dictates the tone, the tempo, the exit. And that's how you win. Not with fire, but with stillness. Not with force, but with focus. The person who regulates themselves owns the room. The one who stays grounded holds the power. And the narcissist, they're left swinging at shadows, confused why nothing lands anymore. There's this moment, quiet, subtle, but life-altering, when you stop needing their approval. When you stop waking up wondering how they'll treat you today. When you stop rehearsing your words in your head to avoid conflict, to avoid setting them off, to avoid being the target. And in that moment, something shifts inside you. You realize that all along they didn't have real power over you, they just had access. And once you take that access away, not by fighting, not by pleading, but by choosing yourself, you become something they can't control, can't manipulate, and most importantly, can't reach anymore. That's the core of it. Power doesn't come from how loud you are or how hard you hit back. It comes from how fully you belong to yourself. And narcissists can't stand that. They don't know how to navigate someone who doesn't need their validation, who doesn't twist themselves into a version they'll accept, because their survival depends on feeding off others, your praise, your reaction, your doubt. But when you reclaim your sense of self, when you walk into a room knowing who you are and what you will and will not tolerate, you become dangerous. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're unavailable to their dysfunction. And you know what that really looks like. It looks like walking away from a conversation without a single ounce of regret. It looks like setting a boundary and not second-guessing it. It looks like choosing silence over screaming, peace over performance, self-respect over validation. That's what breaks the cycle. That's what humiliates a narcissist. Not revenge, not exposure, but your refusal to be moved by their chaos. You rise when they expect you to fall. You pause when they expect you to react. You own your decisions when they expect you to shrink. It's not about proving anything to them. It's about remembering who the hell you are, and that kind of presence, that kind of clarity. It's the one thing they can't manipulate, imitate, or dismantle. Because once you realize that you don't need their recognition to define your worth, once you understand that your power was never lost, just misplaced, you stop giving them the one thing they've always depended on, your attention. And that's the real ending. Not the dramatic goodbye, not the explosive exit, but the quiet decision to never hand them your power again. To live your life on your terms, without waiting for them to validate it. That's not just strength, that's freedom. And it's the kind of freedom they'll never understand, because they never had it themselves. And that's the part they never see coming. Not the silence, not the boundaries, not even the calm. It's the fact that you no longer need them. That you've learned to sit in your strength without chasing validation, without proving your worth, without defending who you are. You didn't just survive them, you outgrew them. And that is the deepest humiliation a narcissist can ever experience. Watching someone they once controlled walk away, not broken, not bitter, not begging, but powerful, clear, and completely free. Because in the end, the most devastating response isn't anger, it's peace. Peace they can't touch, can't twist, and can't ever take back.